You're listening to The Streaming Wars, the podcast that discusses all of the latest happenings regarding your favorite streaming services. Find out which service is winning the war this time around.
Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of The Streaming Wars. I am Dustin and I am joined by Tony, and we are here to discuss all of the news surrounding the streaming services from November 20th through December 2nd. As you are listening to this, you may have realized that our release schedule has changed just a little bit. Going forward, we're going to try to aim to release our episodes on Tuesdays and Fridays, specifically because most content on the services releases on Fridays, and most of the streaming news tends to happen whenever it chooses to happen. But we want to try to give a little bit more space between the episodes rather than releasing on Wednesday and Friday. So hopefully this schedule works for you. It is working for us for the time being. But as we also predicted on the last episode that we covered news, we expected there not to be a whole lot of news. And I will say this, even though we're not covering content, come Thursday, you can expect to hear not very much about Quibi, because Quibi even took the last week off and didn't actually announce a whole lot of new things. So, surprise, surprise, there's not a lot to talk about. But we do have some things to talk about, and we're going to dive into those. So first up, there's two topics that have to do with each other, but are also their own separate articles. Both come from Cord Cutter News. There was a lot of talk about the live TV options kind of going up in price and things like that. And there was a couple of interesting things that developed over the past 2 weeks. One, there was an analyst that was done by MoffettNathanson. They basically did a thing that said that the major reason why live TV in general, and including the live TV services, are actually declining, and people are not just leaving live TV as in cable, but leaving live TV as an option altogether, is because cost is a major factor. With so much content that is free available on places like YouTube and some of the other free options that are out there, in addition to services that people are already paying for, like Netflix, Disney Plus, Apple TV Plus, Prime Video, Hulu, there's a lot of options out there that people are paying for. They're looking at a lot of the live TV possibilities and thinking, well, what's the point of me paying for this? I don't really need to have this. What's the reason I need to have it? And the only situations that we're seeing that people are looking for live TV is exactly what we brought up in previous episodes that Tony mentioned, which is sports and news. Those are the only two things that really drive people to purchase live TV options nowadays, is because they want sports coverage or they want news coverage. And the thing is, you're not always going to get that just based off of free things that are out there. You might be able to follow highlights and things like that, but in most cases, that's what's happening. Which brings an interesting question, or a topic that I wanted to quickly discuss, which is, we've heard HBO Max say that they have intentions of bringing live sports to HBO Max somewhere down the line, not necessarily within the first year or maybe even the second year, but that's like phase 3 of the service, is kind of trying to branch off and start doing live events and things like that. Disney Plus, or Disney as a company, has ESPN Plus, which doesn't have a ton of content that is live sports available on the service itself, because they're kind of locked into certain deals that they have with a variety of affiliate channels and things like that. The question is, I think we're coming up in a situation very soon here in the future where we're going to start to see the major sports leagues, meaning MLB, NFL, NHL, NBA, and maybe even some of the MLS. Some of these sports leagues are going to start looking outside of the realm of just affiliate stations airing their games or even national channels. I think there's going to be a lot of things happening in the future where we start to see more streaming side of things. When you look at something like the NFL Ticket, which is currently locked in over at DirecTV, they have a huge number of games, but there are still games that are blacked out. One of our other stories, which I'll just touch on real quick because it has to do with this is that Major League Baseball has announced that they're looking at ending blackouts across the league specifically because of the popularity of streaming, and it will allow them to open up the ability to sell the streaming rights to these games elsewhere. If it's for something like NBA, how they have the NBA League Pass, and they said, they just changed the pricing structure of that service. If it gives them the ability to offer all the games, it's a higher incentive for someone to pay for that if they're a real big basketball fan. Or in the case of NFL, if NFL doesn't go the route of renewing with DirecTV, or they choose to go somewhere else, they could start their own NFL ticket service and sell that, and it could be pretty successful for them as a whole. So the question I guess I want to pose is, with the idea that blackout dates blackout games could come to an end as a potential future for a lot of these leagues, do you think that the streaming services like ESPN Plus or HBO Max, they are the places that are going to go to trying to get these rights, or do you think that the leagues themselves will go the route of having their own streaming services?
This is a great question. I think it depends per league. I guess I have a preliminary question first. Is BAMTech, does the MLB still have a stake in BAMTech, which Disney Plus got most of the voting shares for?
I know for a fact that Disney is the majority stakeholder in BAMTech, and by my understanding, it could be completely acquired. Disney might have bought the MLB's stake in the company out, similar to the way they're buying Comcast's stake in Hulu out. But I don't know for sure. That's not something I'm positive on. I'll look it up while you talk.
I think it just depends on how much work and how much potential revenue these leagues can get. I think MLB had a better chance since they used to have a majority share in BAMTech. Now they might be totally bought out, but they definitely are not in control of the company. I know, I guess to start in reverse, there are some sports leagues where they have a very beneficial relationship with ESPN. ESPN, usually on like Sunday afternoons, I guess, and later in the night, they air really weird type sports leagues. I mean, one of them was an axe throwing league, which I stumbled upon on a Sunday afternoon, and I was going to go watch an NFL game, and I just couldn't stop watching professional axe throwing. It was pretty interesting. One night there was like the national dodgeball, the world's dodgeball championships. It was like hosted in Japan, and it was pretty wild and interesting. But these leagues are for given the size of these leagues, there's a very niche audience, and they are really into those leagues. One of them is like professional bowling. Like used to be like the 300 Club was always on, and that was really annoying when I was trying to watch some sports games. The point of what I'm trying to say is that I think from some sports leagues, just partnering up with like ESPN and ESPN, which, when I say ESPN, kind of implies like the ESPN Plus. I think that they could partner with maybe like Fox Sports if they decide to do a streaming service, because Fox is another big player besides ESPN in sports streamings, and maybe it's like CBS, because CBS Sports, I think smaller leagues will be okay. Bigger leagues, that kind of changes things, because that's all about the money. I mean, the MLB plays, it's like over 100 games, and if you just look at the size of these MLB contracts that are fully guaranteed or mostly guaranteed, this league generates a crap ton of revenue. The NFL, like streaming rights, not even streaming, just like cable rights to these games are just astronomical. And it's, they're pitting ESPN against CBS and Fox and ABC for these sports rights to these games, and they're just jacking up costs every single year. Like they're raking in money. So is the NBA. I think these leagues, you will have the infrastructure costs to set up their own streaming service. So they might just kind of keep doing the old cable way of just like selling their rights at extremely high prices to these other streaming platforms. Now the thing is what platforms could handle this. I can see Netflix trying to get their hand in the game. I think Amazon has the cash necessary. I think Apple has the cash necessary to get these rights. I think streaming rights will probably even be more lucrative than cable rights that are in the United States. I'm saying this, and I don't have any hard numbers in front of me because it's been a while since I've seen a contract for NFL and NBA sports games, but the bidding war is just ridiculous, and ESPN is trying to get out of it just because it's the NFL is just kind of getting ridiculous in price now, and you need a lot of upfront money to buy these streaming rights, but once you have them, you'll be fine for a couple years. So that's why I think like Amazon and Apple TV, maybe Netflix, but they're already spending a crap ton of content themselves, kind of have the necessary cash to do this. But regardless, I'm happy that these sports leagues are really getting out of their own way in terms of streaming. The whole point of like sports games is to get an ad revenue, right? The Super Bowl every year brings in a crap ton of ad revenue, and that's how these leagues make their money. Yeah, like ESPN does some other things that we pay a subscription for, but these sports leagues make all their money on ad revenue. And so if you can increase your audience to at least, once again, we're saying the United States, so talking about American sports leagues, to at least nationally instead of just these regional markets, that customer base and that potential, customer acquisition is just, there's so many more customers, so many more people that could see the advertising, that could act on that advertising to buy and interact with these different products and services. It's just, they would be, and they kind of are stupid for not getting into this game sooner. And yes, I know that part of that's just due to, contract negotiations that have happened, a long time back, but still, they should have been able to foresee kind of this move happening. As a sports fan, I'm happy in this direction.
So BAMTech, currently 75% owned by Disney, 9% National Hockey League, and 15% the MLB. Basically, all of the stake that Disney has gotten has come from the MLB's stake in it. So they've paid, and all of that money has actually gone directly back to the owners of the teams.
That's why I don't see these leagues kind of doing it on their own. Maybe the MLB and the NBA, just because like there's so many games that happen like mostly year round. The NFL, there's only 16 games plus the playoffs, so they only play like a third of the year. Which, why would you have a streaming service only really active for a third of the year? You know what I mean?
The one catch is that while there's still a basis behind the idea of having something during the off season, because they still have like the NFL Network, which exists during the off season, and and while they don't have a ton of content that's going to draw a lot of people in, the thing is, if they were able to sell, let's say, annual subscriptions for a set amount of money, and you get all those games during the actual season that only lasts for 6 months, you've got the other 6 months that nothing's really going on. Well, you've already collected the money for it. And as a consumer, most people are going to look at it and say, okay, how can I split this up over the course of 12 months? And then it suddenly becomes a better value, rather than, because it was just like the NBA League Pass. They just changed the price of that. When you break it down by month, it's actually not that expensive. Looking at it as one lump sum for just a season, of course it looks expensive. But, I mean, people are already paying an insane amount of money for like NFL ticket on DirecTV. I mean, there's people who stick with DirecTV if for nothing but the NFL ticket.
Yeah, I totally get that. I just also know that this kind of goes back to one of those situations of some of these other smaller studios. Maybe I think we talked about like Paramount or Sony, where it just might be easier for them just to license it out. I don't see the NFL league getting into this business personally. I could see them basically taking their cable approach, but instead of bidding against channel providers, broadcast partners, have them battle out with streaming partners. That's kind of how I see this league going. Now, I totally understand what you're saying, and I think that's at least a good business idea to think further on as a company. I would totally agree with your analysis and definitely do more research into that. But knowing how these companies how these leagues kind of operate, I just see them basically keeping the same status quo, but applying the cable rules to the streaming rules, which, usually I know that streaming is a little bit different, but I think that, the bidding war totally makes sense. The one thing, though, that if this works for American sports, I can see a new race for international market, right? If you can get in soccer, goodness sakes, any of the European soccer leagues, like if you could get the Premier League, the Champions League, all that, you have a massive customer base going on. international markets in the EU market essentially. And then you got Russia because they play in that soccer arena. Cricket is huge in India, and India has a lot of potential subscribers there. Japan has a huge baseball league, and in Latin America too. You got baseball is really big down there. So I think internationally, if they can see, if some of these leagues can see the success of American leagues into streaming, I think that we're gonna have a new bidding war for like international content, which that's a great way to grow subscriber growth for maybe like Amazon or Apple TV or people with a lot of like cash that they can dive into upfront for these streaming rights. Like they can really leverage it to handle these sports leagues.
Yeah, I guess my only problem in my mind, at least, is that most of the streaming services, at least the majority of the streaming services that exist right now, are ad-free. I know that Prime Video has an exclusivity for Thursday Night Football. Every Thursday night they have the same game that I believe appears on CBS also appear on Prime Video. And I don't know the dealings around that other than I know it's there because every single Thursday we have Prime Video's Twitter account constantly tweeting about whatever the football game is that it's on. So they already have done something like that, but I've never watched a football game on Prime Video to know exactly how it works. But I guess my only thought is, for the cable stations, the affiliate channels, all of these different channels that are on normal broadcast, a broadcast thing, not streaming services, the reason they pay so much money for the games and the rights to the games is because the ad revenue is significantly high. I'm not exactly sure what the benefit would be for a streaming service that is currently ad-free to get into airing games with ads, because that contradicts what they're trying to accomplish. At the same time, I don't know how CBS aired the Super Bowl. I don't know if it was just like a live stream where you are seeing the exact same thing you're seeing on television, or if you were seeing something else. Obviously, the games are breaks. That's 4 commercial breaks.
There were breaks. And so instead of, it wasn't like a straight up it wasn't a straight up feed of, the cable broadcast, but they, instead of playing the cable ad, they just played a ad in the video. So, you saw an image showing like, okay, ESPN took a break, or CBS or NBC, whatever. It took a break. And then like a second later, an internet ad started. And then it finished at the same time. So I can, like a lot of podcasters and YouTubers now, due to weird YouTube demonetization practices that happen because of algorithms and whatnot, a lot of them are doing their ads like in the video themselves. They're not relying on YouTube to do the ads. I can see a situation where the ads will be in the videos, but it's not going to be provided by, like, Netflix isn't going to supply the ad. They're going to just relay the same ad from these providers. Because like these games have breaks. Like you can't.
But you see what I'm saying?
You can't just have a break.
Right, but if you go into the international market, how can you possibly go and sell the same product to the international market as you are in the United States? I mean, sure, yes. Major products, whatever, yeah. But
well, I mean, it's going to change. I mean, Netflix charges like what, $3 in India, and it's the same service. Like these countries are going to have to. I mean, these companies are going to work within the regions that they are. I can see a world where that happens, and I can see these companies getting subscribers that way.
I definitely see certain services doing it.
But I totally understand what you're saying. If Fox, like, here's a good company like Fox or NBC, right? Fox Sports, because they're not actually owned by Disney due to the merger rules, so they're their own entity. I can see them, or NBC, and maybe CBS All Access, because they do have a ad-supported network, right? They can bid out for some of these rights, and they could be the exclusive streaming partner of the NFL all season long. So Fox Sports will stream all NFL games with ads, and they are the official streaming partner. I mean, like, that's an interesting proposition for Fox, because they can do their own things, but they will have the backing of the NFL, of CBS, right? They got all their other things with CBS All Access, but they're they're the exclusive streaming platform for the NFL or for like March Madness. Like that's lucrative for them, and they're ad supported too. So I can they're the streaming, they're the exclusive streaming partner for golf, right? They show a lot of golf games, so PGA tours and stuff like that. I can see a world where that happens. Regardless, I think the the regional blackouts are just annoying, and I can see a world where streaming services can play a massive role, and you're going to get a bidding war like there is for cable, but for streaming. How's that going to look? I don't really know, but as long as these companies make their money, like they don't really care. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, as long as we get customers who pay us money, then that's kind of nice.
But the one thing I want to end this on is I really do see some of these services that, especially the ones that are looking at an ad-supported model, I really see them trying to go for some of these sports rights really heavily because they can already have the ads built in. They can offer it with... I don't know how a live game would be airing without ads, if there's already a version of it that has ads. But I guess my thought process is obviously Peacock has got the Olympics because they're locked in, and that's said to be an ad-supported service. We've got ESPN Plus, which is not ad-supported, but I could see them maybe potentially doing ad-supported down the line, especially if they were able to get some of these rights.
Well, here's the thing.
Has also talked about doing ad. Well, we know they're going to do an ad-supported one, and if they churn out the money for some of these rights, it could. DirecTV is a perfect example. DirecTV has been losing subscribers nonstop for basically since AT&T bought them. But the one thing that's really interesting is that they still have this baseline subscribers that always keep it because of the NFL ticket. And that contract's coming up. So it'll be interesting to see if things shift to a different spot. You could end up getting a huge amount of customers. It's like the idea of PlayStation Vue shutting down. Well, those customers are going to go somewhere. It's just a matter of, can some other company figure out how to pull the majority of those customers in? And maybe the answer is HBO Max goes after NFL Ticket hardcore in order to offset the DirecTV, basically the fact that DirecTV is failing.
Here's an interesting thing that I can see would make it even more lucrative, right? So let's just say, CBS is wanting to get into the exclusive streaming partner. CBS, you can get it pretty much anywhere in the United States because of the type of channel it is. And so they sell cable ads. But if they're the exclusive streaming partner, not only can they do their set rate for cable ads because, people are going to tune into the games, via cable. I don't think that's going to die out anytime soon. But then they can charge even a different rate, potentially higher for, the streaming ads, which, like YouTube or like Facebook, other streaming platforms or internet companies might want to target, the streaming ads because it's like, okay, well, if you're watching on streaming, you can make some assumptions about the customer. You can sell two different ads spots for even more money. It's not just we're going to play the same ad here on cable as we would be streaming. You could charge a different rate for an ad streaming, and you could potentially double your advertising revenue almost, or up to double your advertising revenue. That's an interesting offer for CBS or Fox or NBC, one of those players on those major networks.
And then just kind of cap off the live TV discussion, while this doesn't have to do with news specifically with the sports, which is a lot of what we were just talking about. There was some talk about, so if last week you listened to our episode with us discussing John Stanky and Kevin Meyer discussing HBO Max and Disney Plus for their respective companies at the Recode event, that took place, and during Kevin Meyer's interview, he brought up Hulu's live TV service, and we talked about in the last episode how Hulu just will be raising their price in December, about $10 more than it was before, and AT&T TV Now just raised their price a significant amount. I believe it was $15 from what it previously was. But a lot of these companies are running into the problem, and then it gets to the point of, well, how much can it continue to raise before it ends up being almost the same cost as cable? And I saw at least one video comparing talking about the cost of cable compared to adding up the streaming services in addition to a live TV option, and how it can almost get to be the same amount of money. The catch, of course, is that if you aren't subscribing if you're just looking for the live TV option, there's still a big difference in price right now, but eventually that will go up. One of the things that was one of the things that was brought up by Kevin Meyer was that they're currently exploring some potential options for smaller bundles in the future for live TV, meaning there could be options that could be less expensive than the overall one singular package that they offer. And this is something that I don't know that we've talked about specifically on this podcast. I know I've brought this up in conversations maybe offline, but the idea that kind of like an a la carte system, we've already got certain channels like Showtime or HBO that you can buy separately by themselves, and those are considered premium content. So you're not getting like a giant package of channels, you're getting the HBO content and the HBO channels, specifically the movies and stuff. It's all one singular thing. However, there's a point in time that I could see very soon here in the future where you could buy a Disney package, or you could buy a Warner Media package, and Warner Media package would include TBS, TNT, Cartoon Network. The Disney package would be Disney Channel, ESPN. I see something like that very possible in the future, especially at Hulu specifically, because Hulu is owned by Disney. I could see Disney trying to package maybe their channels together by themselves separately to kind of still get people to subscribe to the live TV option and get, the viewership for their other channels as kind of like a stopgap in between the reality of, the live TV options are just not that great. But I honestly think that there's going to be a point where the price is going to get too high and they're going to start working out deals to have more a la carte packages.
There's one interesting thing to before I go off on your point. In the article, one of the things that caught my eye the most was why the bundling was so effective for Disney Plus with Hulu and ESPN is that since they already own the rights for all their content, they paid a one-time fee for all that stuff. And even if it's in-house, like they did pay a one-time fee. It was called the production cost. They had this one-time fee. It doesn't matter if you sell a full Disney Plus subscription or an ESPN Plus subscription, or you bundle them, because it's at the end of the day, even if you bundle, that's extra dollars in the trough of the money trough. That was a good point, and it's why bundling is effective. I didn't think about this at first of how bundling is cost effective, because in my head I thought that you would have to get enough money from the bundles to cover one whose subscription or whatnot. But since they paid a one-time fee for the rights, it doesn't really matter. As long as you get in more money, then you're going to be fine. And, with that mindset, I do like the a la carte system of where you could pick and choose different bundles, you might just have more of like a sports related bundle or more of a kid related bundle. So you get Disney Plus, instead of getting an ESPN bundle, ESPN add-on, you're going to get, a Nickelodeon add-on, or I think HBO is going to do a lot with kids, or maybe if Netflix wants to get into the game, pair with Netflix, so you get Disney Plus and Netflix Kids for the kids content. I think that there's enough research out there and enough ad tracking to kind of tailor bundles for that. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes perfect sense. And this is something that's actually been happening for decades with cable TV, because when the boom of cable TV in the 90s was occurring, a lot of what was happening was you were bundling. I can speak from my own personal experience. I didn't have cable when I was a kid, so I would have never dealt with any of this. But when I moved, I was living in Kansas at the time, and when I went to sign up for cable TV for my apartment at the time, I was specifically, they put down a piece of paper in front of me that said, here's your channel options. This is what you can do. There was a kids package. There was a sports package. There was, I don't know what they phrased it as, but it was like a animal nature stuff. So anything like Animal Planet, National Geographic, Discovery, all those were linked into one, educational package or something like that. There was different packages, and I remember thinking, well, I don't watch kids stuff. I don't need sports, and I don't really need this. So I just got like the basic cable, just the standard, whatever 50 channels that you typically get in any bundle that you would get anywhere else. And remember, that's what I subscribed to. But when I came back from Kansas back up to Chicago, it was very different. It was, you are paying for X amount of channels. You can't get rid of something. Sure, there was certain things like, I believe there was like an MLB package that you could tack on, or there might have been an NFL package that you could tack on, or an NHL one. I know that there was those. But other than that, there really wasn't anything you could like minus. And that was the biggest problem. Is it got to be the point, and this is still the case, because while I was with Comcast, I'm currently with AT&T, it was basically, here's your options. You've got a 350, a 450, or a 550. The numbers don't even relate to how many channels you get anymore. It's just the names of the packages. But the difference between the packages just has to do with certain minuscule things. The difference between AT&T's 450 package and their 550 package was the 550 package included the HBO premium channels. That was it. There was no other difference. But between the 350 and 450, there was a bunch of channels that weren't there that I really didn't need, but you couldn't get the 350 and just tack on HBO. And it's one of those things where they went away with the idea of bundling things just because it was easier just to say you get a ton of channels. And like we've talked about before in past episodes, honestly, when I think about how many channels I watch on my television, it's probably less than 25 channels. Some of them are the normal broadcast channels like NBC, CBS, but for the most part, there's very few channels that I watch that are actually part of my cable package. I watch HBO, I watch Showtime, and I watch a lot of these premium channels because of the content that they offer. But when it comes to a lot of the cable channels, there's some shows here or there that I watch, but nothing where I would say, yes, I need this channel all year round because I watch it all year round. There's hardly any channels that are like that. And I think that's what a lot of people are looking at. They're looking at it and saying, I don't really need all these channels. And I think that's why cable TV as a whole is really become bigger than it needs to be, where a lot of people don't need 1,200 channels. They really don't. And I mean, I know I don't. I know a lot of people don't have time to even come close to watching that. And as the streaming services start to laser focus what the content that they're offering is, more and more people will be inclined to do that. And while everybody keeps talking about bundling, and the idea of, well, this is just going to go back to the way things were at the beginning of cable TV. Yes, but the difference is there's two main reasons it should work this time compared to with cable TV. The first one is you get to pick the content that you get and be way more focused on what content you get. The biggest reason, though, is that by paying for that specific content that you want, that money in turn will produce better content, hypothetically, for what you want. So if you are really looking for premium content and you want to subscribe to HBO, if you're subscribing just to HBO and not to all those other channels, HBO is getting more money to, HBO is probably a bad example. Discovery is launching a streaming service. Discovery, they get certain carriage fees from the deals that they have in place with cable providers, but if they're able to get a direct-to-consumer version of their product out there, they get more money. They can use their money directly to produce more content that you would assume their subscribers would enjoy. Disney Plus is the same idea. They'll have more money to produce content that the fans of a lot of the franchises behind Disney, they enjoy. They'll have more money to produce that content. It's the same idea of Netflix. I mean, Netflix has an insane amount of money that they spend every year, but they also bring in a ton of money, not as much as they're currently spending, but they bring in a massive amount of money, and that's part of the reason why they're able to create all kinds of content is because every single month, on average, they're probably getting $10 per customer, and they've got 158 million customers. Well, do the math. That's over $1.5 billion per month that is coming in every single month. So, and obviously, these are broad strokes of numbers that I'm saying, but like, there's a lot of money there, and you can produce a lot of content in situations like that can really please your customers compared to, just making a blanket of content to fill up 24 hours in a time, for your time slots on a cable channel.
To kind of, I guess, end my thoughts on this is, I love how, and I'm not trying to say it to write us out of a job. I want to keep the streaming wars to continue, but I love how then we're kind of repeating ourselves in a way of how we're bringing back bundling. And we're bringing back a lot of, ideas that were started in the cable business that are shown to be working very well. And I love when people are like, yeah, streaming wars, it's going to be disruptive, everything's changing, but are things changing? Are things really changing that much different? And I think I like the article with Disney Plus and talking about ESPN and Hulu, how bundling is going to help these services, how I think it's going to help consumers. But the thing that's going to be better this time, and I agree with you, Dustin, is that we still have choice. We can still get Disney Plus on our own, or we can bundle it. We can get Hulu on our own, or we can bundle it. I think that's the best. I think we get our money's worth. Even if you get multiple streaming services, it's going to be cheaper than, traditional linear TV in terms of cable costs. And another thing is you get, the entire backlogs of all these shows and these studios too. I mean, like, yeah, we might get Warner Brothers, but in Warner Brothers TV, they have a TV channel, now they have the CW, but you get the massive backlog of all these videos from the studio properties and stuff like that. I just love how this is just another one of those, as Ray Dalio will call it, there's nothing new under the sun, as my mom would say. That's the streaming wars. I just love how the industry is going back to a tried and true method that's been shown for years for dealing with, visual medium content. And I think this article sums it up completely of how things aren't going to be as radical as they seem. I think it's consumer choice is very important of choosing, the content that we see, but also the physical mediums that we see it on. One of the reasons why I think traditional cable is failing is because it's not addressing well how people watch their content these days. They're just not addressing that need properly of how people watch, and I think that's a mechanism in terms of their failure.
It is. It's the reality of it is that the big cable providers don't want to address the fact that the thing, times are changing. If for no other reason than they make a buttload of money every single month, and they don't want to acknowledge. I mean, like, there's companies that are clearly getting called out on it. AT&T's the one who's getting called out the most. And the reason why is because they spent an insane amount of money buying DirecTV, which is basically like an albatross around their neck.
See, your last point kind of, I think, capstone, I guess, my message of how, cable content, cable providers are just missing the point of this new age of viewing content. I don't think it's like the streaming age in terms of, streaming is changing everything. I think just the user and the way the user experiences content is just changing, and they haven't caught up with the times.
Yeah. And the other part of it is that a lot of these cable providers are also internet providers. So they're pretty comfortable with the fact that people are still going to need internet regardless. So, all right. So then our last article is actually from the Motley Fool, which is discussing to be clear, the headline is a little misleading. It says the two streaming services impacted most by Disney Plus so far. It says Disney Plus has already found a massive audience, but are viewers watching anything else? Now, you would assume, you would assume going into this article that they're going to talk about how, well, Netflix is super. They've slowed down a lot, or they've been impacted the most because of Disney Plus. And while surprisingly, a lot of analysts were saying that a lot of people were going to stop their next Netflix subscriptions when Disney Plus launched, and there was people who certainly did. The word is that subscribers for Netflix hasn't actually dropped in a significant way. Not in the sense of, Disney said that they had 10 million activations in the first 2 days. Those are huge numbers, and if 10 million people were leaving Netflix, then that would be a big, huge red flag. But everybody within the industry is saying, no, that hasn't actually happened. Sure, there's some people who left, but it's not anywhere near the number of people who've signed up for Disney Plus. But the point of the article is not actually about Netflix whatsoever. It's actually talking about two other services out there that have been impacted, but actually positively, and that is ESPN Plus and Hulu. Both ESPN Plus and Hulu have actually received 50% more downloads than prior to Disney Plus's launch, according to Apptopia. And that means that there's a significant number of people who are currently signing up for the bundle, because if Disney Plus launched and suddenly Hulu and ESPN Plus are being downloaded more often, that means people are subscribing to the Disney Plus, Hulu, ESPN Plus bundle that they're offering for $13 a month. So what does that mean for Disney? Well, that means that's a good thing, because ultimately the amount of money that they're bringing in isn't just $7 for Disney Plus, but they're bringing in $13. Now, those people who are coming in and saying, I have no problem paying for $13 because I'm going to get 3 services. I'm going to get Hulu, I'm going to get ESPN Plus, I'm going to get Disney Plus. When you combined all of those services together, you do get, it's a pretty decent value for your money. The thing is, when you spread that money across the 3 services, Disney has the ability to create more content and also keeps people locked in, because if Disney Plus doesn't have content for people to watch, they might jump over to Hulu and watch stuff on Hulu for a little while. And then if they want to check out ESPN Plus, they could check out ESPN Plus. But the idea is that instead of just having one service, and when the content potentially dries up or you're not finding something that you want to watch, you have these other services within their bundle bubble, and you're going to check out what other things they have to offer. So it keeps customers engaged with the products that they have, but then it also creates more revenue for them, because instead of just spending $7 for an individual service, they're getting multiple services that they might not be using as much as a single service if they were only paying for the single service. But the amount of money can be spread out a little bit more better, and they can get more content provided for those different services.
Yeah, so the article that I was talking about, this is the main article that's really affected my view of the news recently. This article has now affected my new outlook on terms of streaming. Just I don't have anything new to say, because I feel like I've pretty much said a lot of my points throughout this podcast. Yeah, totally. I think that there's one consideration, right? Doing a devil's advocate here. Like, I know people who got the bundle just because they got like 1 year of Disney Plus free, and then they got the bundle price because it's like, at the end of the day, you essentially would have it was just worth the price, just to get the bundle when you got Disney Plus for free. And I'm not sure. Yeah, I get that every acquisition is good, get more customers in, get them to see the content. Hopefully you keep them around. However, I'm curious, after, these free 1 year trials are over for all these streaming services, but I think Disney Plus, especially just given how like high profile it is in comparison to like Apple TV in terms of like launch, I'm curious in a year, what are the numbers for Disney Plus, and not just Disney Plus, just to see if it works, but for Hulu and ESPN, will people sign up for the bundle, or will people, instead of like getting the bundle because they don't want like, Disney Plus or ESPN Plus, they just, those same customers with the same unique data will just sign up, just for Hulu. I'm curious the effect of Disney Plus on these other services when these trials end, per se. That's, to me, the key point Disney Plus and the bundling of, will it actually help? And I think right now that the numbers are a little bit misleading, just because we don't know if the customers are going to stay on and stuff like that. So just playing devil's advocate, that's my one worry, but we'll have that answer in about a year.
All right, so with that being said, That is all of the news from the past 2 weeks. You should head over to the site, check out the calendar for all the latest content that's coming from all of the various streaming services. As you're listening to this, it's been updated for December for most of the content because Disney has actually announced a lot of their projects for December now. Outside of that, be sure to check us out on Twitter and our Discord to follow all of the headlines that we discuss here on the podcast. Also, be sure to follow us on Instagram for all the latest announcements related to the podcast. You can check out this podcast out on YouTube and all of the other podcast platforms that are currently available. We were recently added to Pandora's podcast library, so definitely if you are a Pandora listener, you can also find us over there as well. The latest episodes are being updated as they release, just like on all the other podcast platforms. So with all of that being said, you can also email us at thestreamingwars@gmail.com with any questions, comments, topics that you'd like us to discuss on future episodes. And with all of that being said, for Tony and myself, this has been The Streaming Wars, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for listening to The Streaming Wars. Check us out on Twitter and Instagram. Also consider supporting us on Patreon. Links can be found at thestreamingwars.io.